All right. Today we're doing 3.4 notes, and it's interpreting slope and intercept. So pretty much being able to look at data and understand what an x and y intercept mean at that point, and then also what slope means for this graph. Okay, so a car owner recorded the number of gallons of gas remaining in the car's gas tank after driving a number of miles. So if we're looking at our graph right here, we have the number of miles driven on the x-axis because that is our independent variable. All right, and notice it goes from 0 to 500. The number of gallons is on our y-axis, and it is our dependent variable. And then because the number of gallons of gas we have will determine will be determined by the number of miles we drive. So the more miles we drive, the less gas we have. Hence why our graph is a negative slope. Okay, because we'll be driving more miles but losing gas as we do that. All right. So what is the x-intercept? So remember, x-intercept is where it intersects the x-axis. Okay, so it intercepts the x-axis at this point right here, which is at 500, 0. I was getting ahead of myself there. And it asks, what does it represent? Okay, so if on the x-axis it's the number of miles driven, okay? So this means that we have driven 500 miles, but 500 miles for what? All right, so what it means is we have driven 500 miles to lose all of our gas. So because we have 0 gallons of gas left in the tank. So it took him 500 miles to run out of gas. Okay, so biggest thing is that you're using both like miles and gallons in your representation of the x, y, and the slope. All right, so this next one, it says, what is the y-intercept? So the y-intercept is where the line intercepts the y-axis. So it intercepts the y-axis at our point 0, 20. Okay, so what does this represent? So our y-axis is 0, 20. So 0 representing the number of miles I've driven. So I haven't driven any miles, but I've started out with 20 gallons because my intercept is right here. I have 20 gallons of gas in the tank. So how you interpret this is he started his trip out with 20 gallons of gas. All right, so now we want to find the rate of change. The rate of change is just the slope, okay? And we are wanting to know what does it represent. So right now, we don't have much to go off of but the y-intercepts and the x-intercepts. So we're going to use our intercepts to find slope. Now, in the last video, we learned how to find slope between 2 points. And it's y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. Okay, so I'm going to go back up to my points and label those. So we have our x1, our y1, our x2, and our y2. And then now we just put them in the formula as is. So we have y2, which is 0, minus our y1, which is 20. And then we have our x2, which is 500, and our x1, which is 0. All right, now we just subtract as is. So 0 minus 20, 0 subtract 20 is a negative 20. And then 500 minus 0 is just 500. When we simplify this out, we get a negative 1/25. So what this means, if 0 and 20, so our y, so my slope is negative 1/25, so, or 25. So we know that this is correct because our slope is negative. We talked about that at the beginning. But now I need to figure out, what does it represent? So when I'm looking at my slope, it's always the change of y over the change of x. Okay, so 1 represents what our y-axis was. So our y-axis is the number of gallons. So I know that for every 1 gallon of gas, I use, or they use, okay? So that's what that 1 on top represents, because it's our y's, and our y-axis is gallons of gas, okay? For every 1 gallon of gas I use, well, 25 is our x's. So we look at our x-axis, and it's the number of miles driven. So for 1 gallon of gas I use, I drive 25 miles. All right, so, or the gallons of gas decreases by 1 gallon per 25 miles. Whatever it is, you use 1 gallon per that 25 miles. So you base it off the x and y axis, knowing that your y axis is what is on top. All right, domain and range, okay? So domain, remember, domain is your x values. Okay, so if I'm looking at my ordered pairs, my domain, I'm going to use my x coordinates. Okay, because it's left to right. Okay, so this is my domain down here. Well, my domain, my graph starts at 0, and my inequalities will always face the same way, and my x goes in the middle, and my graph stops at 500. Okay, so because my graph stops at 500, my domain stops at 500. Range is your y's. So range, I like, because range starts with R, it's your rock bottom to the rocky tops. So I'm looking from bottom to top. Well, the lowest my graph goes is at 0, or if I'm looking at my y values, okay, so 0 will go first. Inequalities will always face the same way. Y goes in the middle because it's range. And then my rocky tops, so 20, okay, which is also my second y value, so 20. So there is my domain and range. So how many gallons of gas are in the tank after 300 miles have been driven? So what you do in order to find that, you have to go to the graph. And if I want to know the gallons of gas that I are in the tank, I'm going to determine, okay, depending on my x-axis and my y-axis, what am I looking for here? Well, because gallons of gas is on the y-axis, if we look up here, gallons of gas is on the y-axis, I am looking for what y should equal. And then after 300 miles is what x equals. So x equals 300 miles. So I'm going to go on my domain, my x-axis, and look for 300 miles. Okay, I'm going to go find the graph on where it hits. Hits about right there. And then I go and see where it's at on the y-axis. Well, it's about at 8. Okay, I'll say it's about at 8. So what you just determined is that I have 8 gallons left after 300 miles. Number 6, it says if there are 15 gallons of gas remaining, so aka y equals 15, how many miles have been driven? Okay, so what I'm looking for is x now, and then I'm going to find where y is 15. Well, y is 15 right here, so I'm going to go meet the graph, and then go down, and it hits right about there. So it's a guesstimate, okay? If you have a multiple choice answer, it'll be a lot easier to know what your answer is. But I'm going to say about 110 miles have been driven. And I know this because when I look at 15 and I meet where the graph is, well, the graph is here, and I find it on the x-axis. Well, the x-axis says I've driven about 100 and so odd miles. So that lets me know when I have 15 gallons left in the tank, I've driven about 110, 120 miles. All right. So I'm going to let you guys try this one. The copy of notes will be on Google Classroom. Just know if there's no intercept, aka this first one, it says what is the x-intercept and what does it represent. If there's none, that means it's okay to put none. Okay, I just want you to try to determine what it means. And then if you check on Google Classroom, it'll tell you if you're right or wrong. All right, bye guys.